Hello, welcome to the program The Mace for this week. I am Rosemary Kokotega. Topping today's chart. Senate moves to establish Sports Commission for Federal Capital Territory. Now the only senator representing the FCT, Philip Aduda, is the sponsor of the bill that passed second reading. House approves Bill 47 on Constitution 5th alteration seeking establishment of State Security Council. This is standing in the name of the Deputy Speaker, Mr. Idris Wase, and 68 other lawmakers. These are among other proceedings from the floor of both chambers of the National Assembly featuring on the Mace today. Stay tuned. ASO Television is live on DSTV channel 392, Star Times TV channel 127, Free TV channel 507, and on the UHF band on channel 38.
We are a nation blessed with people of diverse cultures, religions, languages, and opinions. It is ironic that we are now being ripped apart by our greatest strength, our diversity. We have allowed intolerance, insensitivity, bigotry, and nepotism to blind our vision of the greatness we can achieve working together as one. We may not have the same culture, nor religion, nor language, but we all belong to the same nation by the divine will of God. We did not choose to be Nigerians. Nigeria chose us. This nation is our divine heritage, and if we open our eyes, we would realize that what divides us pales in comparison to what unites us. And by the comparison and conciliation of our differences, we will grow until our differences disappear. Our unity cannot be willed by mere declarations, nor do we get unity by ignoring the questions that beg for answers. We must celebrate our diversity and debate our differences without fracturing our unity. Our strength is not in our numbers, but in our unity, because even the weak become strong when united. Nigeria unite.
This message is brought to you by Abuja Broadcasting Corporation, owners and operators of ASO Radio 93.5 FM Abuja, ASO Television DSTV Channel 392, Star Times Terrestrial Channel 127, Free TV Channel 507, People's TV Channel 285, and UHF Channel 38.
You're watching The Maze on ASO Television. We take off from the floor of the Red Chamber, where a bill seeking to establish an FCT Sports Commission scaled through second reading. The only senator for the Federal Capital Territory, FCT, Senator Philip Aduda of the PDP, sponsored the bill aimed at encouraging the development, organization, and participation in sports in Abuja when it becomes a law. Here we have Senator Aduda speaking to the general principle of the bill.
The bill essentially seeks to establish the FCT Sports Commission to be charged with the responsibility of administering, encouraging, and developing sports and games in the FCT. The functions of the commission, amongst others, include to encourage the development, organization, and participation in sports in the FCT, to coordinate and integrate efforts to raise the standard of performance in the sports in the FCT, to promote in cooperation with other sports bodies or sports groups the physical fitness and general well-being of all persons in the FCT, to organize or assist financially or otherwise the participation in sports at interstate, national, and international levels, to conduct and encourage research into all matters relating to sports, to provide and maintain sports centers and facilities for the training of Nigerians as instructors and organizers of sports. Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues, FCT has suffered greatly from the disconnect that has existed between our sports history and our current performances. We need to recognize the fact that our history was created for a reason, and that has best of our future truly lies on how we are able to manage historical events and pass it on from one generation to the other in sports process and discovery. Development, maintenance, competition, and retention are areas that can be so simplified by design and implementation, but you must understand and know how to walk it. Every stage requires the right team combination of coaches, administrators, sports medicine, trainers, sports psychologists, volunteers, sports supporters, and of course, reliable sources for sponsorship in cohesiveness with one goal in mind. This is to produce the best from the available pool of sportsmen and women. With this, the establishment of the FCT Sports Commission will ensure a rapid development of sports in the FCT. This bill seeks to change FCT sports to bring them in line with international best practices, especially in the areas of sports administration, global competition, as well as welfare of footballers and athletes generally. Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues, this bill could not have come at a better time than now to give legal backing to the important commission to help rejuvenate the FCT sports industry so as to make it become serious business. This bill has no financial implication as there already exists a department in the FCT, and it will make use of this structure for its takeoff with budgetary allocation in the FCT statutory budget and allocation. I once again thank you for your kind attention and urge you all to support this bill for the second reading. Thank you very much, and God bless you.
The Chairman, Senate Committee on FCT, Senator Smart Adeyemi, is one of the supporters of the bill.
I commend him for the presentation of this bill. There is no doubt, Mr. President, that sports all over the world is no longer a mere source of recreation. To a large extent, Mr. President, sport can be seen as a modern profession where people can earn their livings apart from the health benefits of active participation and encouragement of sporting activities amongst the younger generation and, in fact, the older generation. Sports is a source of livelihood, is a source of revenue earning for nations and communities of the world. Sport is the one single event that unites the nation, and indeed Nigeria. Sports is a forum where nations are appreciated, where national anthems and flag of nations are respected and honored because of the performance of nations in international and indeed national competitions. I say this, Mr. President, to emphasize the fact that there's a need more than ever before to give concentration towards the development of sporting activities in the FCT. The FCT being the melting point of Nigerians is one area, even though not a state, but the Constitution says the FCT shall be seen as if it were a state. So whatever is operational in states of the nations should be operational in Abuja. But I think more importantly, Mr. President, that sport is a venue of not just for the recreational purpose, and indeed for business, is one event that unites people. Whenever we have an international competition, Nigerians forget their differences. And I think we should continue to give all the encouragement that is needed. But I think I must equally emphasize, Mr. President, that there's a need to deliberately encourage the development of sporting activities in Nigeria as a way of discovering the hidden talent, the abundance of talent in this nation, of younger generation, who could represent our nation in international competitions and in Olympics level. So I stand to say, Mr. President, all this can only be achieved and enhanced when we have a sport commission in place, which will help in the administration, policy formulation, implementation of policies of sport development. There is no amount of money that is too small or that will be sufficient enough to continue to develop sporting activities. I therefore want to commend my brother, the senator representing the FCT, for coming out with this bill, and I want to create indulgence of my colleagues, and I'm happy to see that there are quite a number of us who are seated here who were stars those days when we were still growing up. And I could see Obina there. I still recognize his contribution to sporting activities, even though this morning was a bit hard. But I can understand because but Mr. President, I think all of us should give our support for this bill, so that we can have a sport commission in Abuja, so that our children and those of us who are already having grandchildren, so our grandchildren too can continue to embrace sporting events in this Federal Capital Territory, to the glory of God and to the glory of our nation. I so submit, Mr. President.
Mr. President, I rise to support the bill. And I say to you, Mr. President, this is a very straightforward bill.
Just put the question.
All we need to do is to put the question and pass this bill.
Simple.
Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Mr. President, I think Senator Olujimi has said it all. This is actually not a new bill. It's actually to legalize what is already in place. They have a Department of Sports in FCT, and FCT being considered as a state should have a commission, an agency that should take care of the activities of sports in Abuja. So I support it, and I want the Senate to just pass it. Thank you.
President of the Senate, Ahmed Lawan, who presided over the plenary, ruled on the bill as passed by colleagues through a voice vote and referred to relevant committee for further legislative input.
A bill for an act to establish the FCT Sports Commission to be charged with the responsibility of administering, encouraging and developing sports and games throughout FCT and for other matters thereto. 2023 second reading taken, and the bill is referred to the Committee on Sports and Social Development to report back within 4 weeks.
Another legislation, the Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission Act Repeal and Reenactment Bill by Senator Olubunmi Adetumbi, passed second reading as well.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, it is my pleasure and privilege to lead the debate on the general principles of this bill. The bill was read for the first time in this Senate on Tuesday, 4th of April, 2023. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, it is pertinent and worthy of note that despite being a body established by the Constitution and whose independence is further guaranteed by the Act establishing it, the Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission, RAMFAC, has been hamstrung by certain limitations. Some of these limitations are inherent in the extant Act. In a world faced with the twin challenges of dwindling revenue and spiraling population and its attendant pressure on scarce resources, the imperative for a prudent management and effective utilization of our nation's commonwealth cannot be overemphasized. This is particularly instructive, bearing in mind that the Act came into force in 2004 and has not been updated to reflect the changing realities of our time. While the laws establishing other agencies alongside with RAMFAC has been updated to respond to contemporary challenges in terms of productivity and capacity, RAMFAC that is expected to police these organizations and generate the required funds for the 3 tiers of government has comparatively remained obsolete, thus impeding its ability to fulfill its mandates of monitoring and mobilizing resources for such government organizations to the Federation. Distinguished colleagues, this bill, as proposed, is structured into 6 parts, 18 clauses, 3 schedules dealing with establishment, composition of the Commission, powers and functions of the Commission, organization of and staff of the Commission, financial provisions and reports, enforcement powers, and miscellaneous provisions. The bill fundamentally seeks to achieve the following objectives. 1 is to reinforce the mandate and the powers of the Revenue Mobilization, Allocation, and Fiscal Commission as bodies saddled with the responsibility of monitoring revenue generation and disbursement on behalf of the people and the government of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. 2 is to make unlawful for the Commission, board or revenue generating agencies of the government of the Federation to withhold remittances into the Federation account of revenues generated by it pursuant to Section 16, Sub 1 of the 1999 Constitution as amended. 3, to outline penalties for any revenue generating agency of the government of the Federation which fails, refuses, delays, or neglects to remit monies collected for and on behalf of the government of the Federation within 30 days of such collection. 4, to provide for the guarantee, the funding of the Commission by the federal, state, and local government as opposed to a present situation where the federal government provides grossly inadequate envelope funding, whereas its functions as enshrined in the Constitution serves the benefit of the 3 tiers of government in the Federation. And finally, Mr. President, to prescribe appropriate sanctions for any public official who knowingly or willfully submits a false statement of account to the Commission, fails, refuses, or neglects to comply with any directive given by the Commission pursuant to the provision of this Act, or willfully obstructs, interferes with, assaults, or resists any member, officer, or servant of the Commission, or aids, abets, procures, or induces any other person to obstruct, interfere with, assault, or resist any such member, officer, or servant of the Commission in the discharge of his or her lawful duty under this Act. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, this bill further seeks to, among other things, establish a holistic framework for monitoring, evaluating, and enforcing effective mobilization of government revenues for economic recovery, social investment, and infrastructural development. The passage of this bill will provide the much-needed economic stimulus, engender public fiscal transparency and accountability, while also securing the buy-in of Nigerians who will be assured of the state of public funds. Overall, these bills seeks to cure the defect and the inadequacies of the existing Act. Finally, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I seek your unreserved cooperation and commitment in giving this bill the attention it deserves, as I believe it will be the benefit of the 3 tiers of government in the Federation. Thank you, distinguished.
Yes. Mr. Wish.
Most of these revenue generating agencies do not remit what they are supposed to remit as at when they are supposed to remit, and at times they under-remit. So I want to believe that this bill is apt, such that at the end of the day, the Revenue Mobilization, Allocation, and Fiscal Commission will be adequately empowered to monitor the remittance of funds from these revenue generating agencies as at when due, and ensure that whatever is remitted is not mix up with the requirement of the law. Okay? Then secondly, I want to believe that the institution of sanctions for deterrent, the institution of sanctions will act as deterrent to some of these revenue generating agencies. So on the whole, the leakages is so much and so enormous, and the federal government is losing a lot of money on a daily basis arising from these leakages. So the institution of this, the second reading of this bill is very important, so that this organization, Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission, will be adequately empowered to ensure that funds that are remitted to the federal government should be remitted as at when due, and any of the organization that does not comply will be sanctioned accordingly, and that will act as deterrent to others. On that note, I want to support the second reading of this bill.
A bill for an act to repeal the Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission Act, Cap R7, Laws of the Federation of Nigeria 2004, and enact the Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission to grant the Commission enforcement powers in the monitoring of accruals to and disbursement of revenue from the Federation account, and bring the Act in conformity with the provisions of the 1999 Constitution as amended, and for other matters related therewith. 2023, second reading taken, and the bill is referred to the Committee on National Planning and Economic Affairs to report back within 4 weeks.
Still at the day's plenary, a bill aimed at halting exploitation of the country's solid minerals, especially by foreigners, was passed by the Senate. Senator Tanko Almakura of Nasarawa State, who is also chairman, Senate Committee on Solid Minerals, sponsored the bill seeking to establish an agency to check the illegality as well as establish a development fund to support the sector.
Distinguished colleagues, the ninth order of the day is the presentation and consideration of the report of the Committee on Solid Minerals, Mines, Steel Development and Metallurgy, on the Nigerian Mineral Development Corporation Establishment Bill 2023, SB 505. Distinguished senators will recall that the bill was read to the chamber on Tuesday, 23rd March 2021. Mr. President, you may wish to invite Senator Almakura Omar Tanko, chairman of the committee, to move the motion for the presentation and consideration of the report.
Distinguished Senator Omar Tanko Almakura.
Mr. President, as the chairman, Senate Committee on Solid Minerals, State Development and Metallurgy, I rise to move that the Senate do receive the report of the Committee on Solid Minerals, Mine and State Development and Metallurgy on the Nigerian Mineral Development Corporation Establishment Bill 2023, SB 505. I so move.
Distinguished Senator Oriolo Aderele Demi.
Committee on Solid Minerals, Mine, Steel Development and Metallurgy, I stand to second the motion moved by my chairman that the Senate do receive the report of Committee on Solid Minerals, Mines, Steel Development and Metallurgy on the Nigerian Mineral Development Corporation Establishment Bill 2023, SB 505.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, the essence of this bill is to ensure that the outfit NMDC, Nigerian Mining Development Corporation, would be a strategic vehicle in driving the diversification of the Nigerian economy. Solid minerals development is one of the 9 priority areas of stabilizing the macro economy and also build our economy from being a monoproduct economy to a more diversified one. recommendations. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, this bill will unbundle the solid mineral sector to enhance more purposeful execution of the upstream, midstream, and downstream sectors in order to facilitate participation by major investors, small-scale and artisanal miners, and also provide the effective private sector participation. Conclusion. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, this bill will be a one-stop vehicle of enhancing the development of our economy holistically and sanitize the operation in the sector in line with international best practices. In view of this, I wish to urge Mr. President and my distinguished colleagues to kindly consider and pass the NMDC Bill 2023. Thank you for the opportunity given to us to carry this very important assignment. I so move.
Thank you very much. Any comments? Leader of the Senate, Committee of the Whole. Those in favor at clause 1, clause 2, clause 3, clause 4, clause 5, clause 6, clause 7, clause 8, clause 9, clause 10. Stands part of the bill, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Clause 11, appointment of the Corporation Secretary. On page 7, clause 11. Those in favor at clause 11, clause 12, clause 13, clause 14, clause 15, clause 16, clause 17, clause 18, clause 19, clause 20. Stand part of the bill, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Clause 21 is on page 11. The Nigerian Mineral Development Fund. Those who were at clause 21, clause 22, ownership, clause 23, clause 24, clause 25, clause 26, clause 27, clause 28, clause 29, clause 30, stand part of the bill, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes. Those who were at the schedule, stands part of the bill, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Sorry? No. I know what I'm doing there. 31 and 32 are the long title and the schedule. So the schedule is 31. Those who are at the schedule, which is on page 15, stands part of the bill, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Those who are at the long title, stands part of the bill, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Leader of the Senate, plenary. The Senate, in the Committee of the Whole, considered the report of the Committee on Solid Minerals, Mines, Steel Development and Metallurgy on the Nigerian Mineral Development Corporation Establishment Bill 2023 and approved as follows. Long title as recommended, clause 1 to 32 as recommended, schedule as recommended. Is this a true reflection of what transpired in the Committee of the Whole? Thank you. Leader of the Senate, third reading. A bill for an act to establish the Nigerian Mineral Development Corporation to invest and catalyze investments in the mining sector, to promote and support mining sector growth, and for other related matters, 2023, third reading taken, and the bill is passed. Well, thank you very much, distinguished chairman of this very important committee. And this is one very significant and important legislation that will support our mining sector. The mining sector in Nigeria is supposed to contribute as much as probably 30% of our GDP. Apparently, we are less than 0.5% at the moment, which is not acceptable. Thank you very much.
The Senate, following a previous executive communication from President Muhammadu Buhari, confirmed as members of the Universal Service Provision USP Board, Mr. Ahmed Abubakar Walama, Mrs. Fatima Kiari, and Engineer Benga Adebayo. Confirmation of Engineer Funke Okbeke was, however, stepped down due to failure of the nominee to appear before the Senate on health grounds.
The Senate, in the Committee of the Whole, considered the report of the Committee on Communications on the screening of Mr. President's nominees for appointment as Governing Board of the Universal Service Provision USP and approved the nominations of Mr. Ahmed Abubakar Walama, Mrs. Fatima A. Kiari, Engineer Benga Adebayo as Governing Board of the Universal Service Provision USP. And the Senate stood down the approval of the nomination of Engineer Funke Opeke. Is this a true reflection of what transpired in the Committee of the Whole? Thank you. Confirmation. Will the Senate confirm the nomination of Mr. Ahmed Abubakar Walama as a member of the Universal Service Provision Board? Those in favor say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. The nomination of Mr. Ahmed Abubakar Walama is hereby confirmed as a member of the Universal Service Provision Board. Will the Senate confirm the nomination of Mrs. Fatima A. Kiari as a member of the Universal Service Provision Board? Those in favor say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. The nomination of Mrs. Fatima A. Kiari is hereby confirmed as a member of the Universal Service Provision Board. Will the Senate confirm the nomination of Engineer Benga Adebayo as a member of the Universal Service Provision Board? Those in favor say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. The nomination of Engineer Benga Adebayo is hereby confirmed as a member of the Universal Service Provision Board. Well, congratulations to the three of them. We wish them the best of tenure as members of the board.
The Senate also during the plenary considered a communication from President Muhammadu Buhari requesting the reimbursement of certain amount in billions of naira to Plateau and Borno states for road projects undertaken with the state's funds.
Those in favor of the motion that the Senate do consider the request of Mr. President CNC for the reimbursement of 6,601,769,470 naira 99 kobo to Plateau State Government and the sum of 3,84,769,393 naira 63 kobo to Borno State Government through the issuance of promissory notes in respect of federal road projects executed by the states. Say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. The request of Mr. President, CNC, is referred to the Committee on Domestic and Foreign Loans to report back within 2 weeks.
Now, the House of Representatives within the same week approved the Bill 47 on the Constitution 5th alteration seeking establishment of State Security Council. The motion to this effect is standing in the name of the Deputy Speaker of the House and 68 other lawmakers. Lawmaker Toby Okechukwu led debate on the motion.
House, because that on 24th of January 2003, the Clerk of the National Assembly was directed to transmit 35 constitution alteration bills that met the requirements of Section 92, Section 9, Subsection 2 of the 1999 Constitution to Mr. President for his assent. Also recalls that Houses of Assembly of Gombe, Jigawa, Kebbi, Kwara, Plateau, Sokoto, Taraba, Zamfara states that were yet to forward their resolutions were urged to do so in compliance with constitutional obligations. Aware that Oyo and Zamfara states Houses of Assembly have accordingly forwarded their resolutions. Convinced that with the approval of Oyo and Zamfara states Houses of Assembly, the Constitution 5th Alteration Bill number 47, Establishment of State Security Council, has made the provisions of Section 9 of Section 9, subsection 2 of the 1999 Constitution for passage.
When our republic is tampered with by security, it is expected that each of these legislatures should discharge their responsibility with some level of speed. That is the only way to show that we are minded about the worries of the republic. And it is of concern, Mr. Speaker, that the passage of the Constitution 5th Alteration Bill number 47, dealing with the establishment of State Security Council, that our people are erring and they are showing reluctance. The various state legislatures are showing reluctance in passing them, as well as other bills. So, Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, I remember, but it's about close to 1 year when these bills were dealt with. The same thing with the local government autonomy bill, the various legislations we have passed. If we are not able to establish state police, Mr. Speaker, let us do the minimum and have a body that is recognized by law that can deal with matters of security. And that is the only way, Mr. Speaker, we will not be shifting the goalpost, looking for who to blame at any point in time. Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, some responsibilities that ordinarily would be discharged at the state level, they begin to look for a federal nomenclature to deal with it. This is one clear case where we can deal with matters better. Even if we don't agree, let us say so. If we agree, let us deal with it. 9 months, 1 year after, it doesn't show good that we are conscious of what is happening to us. I will also use this platform for our colleagues who are from those states that have not passed this bill or some of the bills. Well, these members of state legislatures are constituents. The governors are constituents. Let us know the reason why this should not be given speedy attention, as well as other bills. I know there are a good number of them. This is just one bill that the two states have passed and they have now, is now possible to transmit to Mr. President. What of the others? So I'm just using this as a way to raise our consciousness that our job is not done. If we vacate this session, 9th Assembly, without those bills being dealt with, then by a function of law, they will no longer, they will have to be reintroduced and started de novo. Thank you very much.
And now to the resolutions.
House resolves to urge Gombe, Jigawa, Kebbi, Kwara, Plateau, Sokoto, and Taraba states House of Assembly that are yet to forward their resolutions on the bills to do so in fulfillment of their constitutionally imposed legislative obligations to the Constitution amendment process. Mandate the clerk to the National Assembly to transmit the bill to the President for his assent in line with the provision of the Act of Authentication Act. I so move, Mr. Speaker.
The Deputy Speaker of the House, Mr. Idris Wase, who presided over the plenary, later stressed the need for harmony between national and state assemblies for the benefit of Nigerians as well as for the ease of governance, which is one of the principal reasons for which legislators are re-elected.
As some bills are possibly, if the administrators that have not passed yet their own submission, if they're able to do, we may gain again on other areas. For example, the alteration that has to do with local government autonomy. There could be deciding factors, and it's my plea and appeal. I will join him to appeal to those states to also act. And it will not be out of sight, out of order for us who are coming from those states to again appeal to those states to consider some of the bills that are before them. Thank you very much. Those in favor of the motion say aye. Against say nay. That's a bit.
To round off today's program, we take a quick look at a motion that was stepped down on the floor of the House. This is on the need to investigate the non-provision of mobile telecommunication network services to underserved and unserved areas of Nigeria by the Nigerian Communications Commission, as moved by Mr. Sergius Ogun. We have now the presentation of the motion by the sponsor.
Establish the Nigerian Communications Commission, NCC, with the responsibility of regulating the communications sector in Nigeria. The House also notes that the provisions, Section 4 of the Nigerian Communications Act, CAP, N97 Laws of the Federation of Nigeria, 2004, the NCC is saddled with the responsibility of facilitating investment in and entry into Nigerian market for provision and supply of communication services, equipment, and facilities. The House is aware that in the wake of the rapid expansion of the global system of mobile communication, GSM, in Nigeria, most of the mobile telecommunication network operators were reluctant to move to the rural areas owing to business considerations. The House is also aware that the Nigerian Communications Act, CAP N97, Laws of Federation of Nigeria 2004, empowers the NCC to receive 2.5% of the annual turnover of the mobile telecommunication network operators as annual license renewal fee. The House is further aware that the NCC is expected to utilize the funds generated from the contributions of mobile telecommunication network operators for implementing universal access strategy and program in accordance with the federal government policy thereon, as enshrined in Section 4 of the Act. The House is informed that the NCC on its own decided to contribute 40% of the funds generated from the 2.5% annual turnover from mobile telecommunication network operators, translating to 1% of the annual turnover of the operators to the Universal Service Provision Fund, USPF, a practice common throughout Africa. The House is also informed that the Universal Service Provision Fund, USPF, is to be used to build infrastructure in the underserved and unserved areas of Nigeria, which can subsequently be made available to the mobile telecommunication network operators, who will in turn utilize such infrastructure in serving the areas that they are headed to, underserved and unserved. The House is further informed that the first major infrastructure project attempted by the NCC in this regard was the Emergency Response System, EROS, which led to the construction of emergency communication centers all over the country, with little or no results, although the contract was awarded in millions of US dollars, with annual physical appropriations to the said project. The House is disturbed that the inability of the NCC to utilize the USPF to promote the widespread availability and usage of network services and applications throughout Nigeria, as enshrined in Section 112 of the Nigerian Communications Act, CAP N97, Laws of the Federation of Nigeria, is a great disservice to the nation. The House resolves set up an ad hoc committee to investigate the failure/inability of the Nigerian Communications Commission, NCC, to promote widespread availability and usage of mobile telecommunication network service throughout Nigeria, including the underserved and unserved areas, and report back within 4 weeks for further legislative action. Mr. Speaker, my highly esteemed colleagues, I so move.
And to the debate on and contributions to the motion before the eventual stepping down by leave of the House.
Mr. Speaker, as you may remember, I think the GSM came on stream, I think 2001. And the license holders then, as the MTN, Glo, Airtel, and all of them, were supposed to take services to the rural areas. Because of commercial considerations, as most of us will know, I am sure we have communities that have requested for masts to be installed in their communities. And some of us have written clearly to these bodies. And they will tell you it's commercial. We don't have enough people in these areas. So if we go and install a mast, we are not going to get the return on that investment. But the NCC Act was amended, I think it was in the 6th Assembly, to allow for 2.5% of the annual turnover of the telcos, that the telecommunication companies, to be used by NCC to take the infrastructure to the rural areas. So the NCC, in their own wisdom, dedicated 1% of that fund, which is like 40% of it, to taking infrastructure there. So the idea is that when you have that infrastructure in the rural area, those GSM operators can co-locate their facility there, making it possible to have universal service provision. So if that had happened, everywhere in this country would be covered. That's what that fund was meant for. But what the NCC did for the start, they started with emergency response system, awarded a lot of contracts everywhere. You and I know we don't have that today. Our locals, our communities, there's no emergency response number. Even the units that they so-called, they built, places that were built by NCC, they are not functioning. So the question today, all the monies, the millions of dollars that is collected from the telcos as part of their annual renewal license that goes to NCC, that is meant for this, what is it used for? If we don't have universal coverage in Nigeria, 1, and the universal response system, 2, what is it used for? So, Mr. Speaker, it's straightforward. We need to ask questions. I don't want to go into the issues of when people said they didn't have coverage during the elections and they cannot send, transmit or anything. I don't want to go into all that today.
Yes,
but if this NCC had done its work, we would have had universal coverage in this country today. And if fund has been provided for that, what has happened to the fund? That is the question. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I pray that my brother will step it down for him to make more assessment, and then if getting the departments and the rest, so that we can know exactly where to direct. We don't get confused. You can do this today, we will have it tomorrow.
Overlap some function of NCC and also as regard service providers' responsibility. Some of these analysis of the mover of the motions are the exclusive right of service providers who are in the country to do business, practically to do business, and they know the area they can cover as time permit. The NCC just only regulate, and they know the service providers are in the country to make money. And the act of the NCC has stated clearly their limitation and what of view. If we are talking about the coverage of the whole country, this is a continuous something by the broadband of the NCC, which cannot be covered at a go. Every year they do present budget and they do move and try to cover the entire country. But everything is on progress. It cannot be done at a go. It's not only Nigeria. There's no country in Africa that have been covered 100%. Not even in South Africa that MTA come from. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Under the chairmanship of the Honorable Minister of Digital Economy and Communication. So the NCC is separate, USPS fund is being run separately under the chairmanship of the Minister of Communication and Digital Economy. And we believe they are expanding. We believe they are trying every year, and the coverage is improving every year. It's not something that can be done at a go.
Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, the motion regarding the need to investigate the non-provision of mobile telecommunication network service to underserved and universal areas of Nigeria by Nigerian Communication Commission by our colleague Sergius is quite timeless. Mr. Speaker, if you check the contemporary pressures in Nigeria today, you'll find out that the motion is in all fours with the expectations of Nigerians. More importantly, when we do elections that have sufficiently gone digital. Two, we do, what did I call this cashless policy? We do cashless policy, where our citizens are expected to transfer money. Mr. Speaker, a word of mine who traveled to the village told me she's not able to come back today because she has no place to draw cash and she cannot transfer. Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, we know that there is this fund. This fund is expected to deal with missing links in the communication industry. My expectation is that the chairman communication should tell us how much is this fund. Just a moment, sir. Just a moment. Please, this is a serious business. No, it's not difficult. It doesn't have to be right. But you can say we've generated 100 billion, 300 billion, and this is the level of deployment of that fund. Let me drop my point. You have your brief. And the acting chief whip should allow me, please. Listen to me in silence. And that is why I said that there is some memory issues, that is associated with ranking. Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, please let us give value to this. I understand the idea. You said, let us make more inquiries and be seized so that we know, we are not looking at the motion itself on the need to inquire because of the urgent needs of Nigerians. We are looking at where should we domicile the motion? Where should we direct this inquiry? Is the Universal Fund independent now of communication? If it's so, we now tailor the motion in that direction. So the need, absolute need for the motion is very important. And this, we know that SEC regulates. But we know that during the context of that regulation, they have been mandated by law to address these issues that where it's not commercially viable for network providers to provide network. I know it's being done. So it's not out of respect from their responsibility. They will regulate. But as a government, they can intervene to provide network. So let us, in compliance with the request of the Speaker, make this inquiry today and bring back this motion because of its contemporaneous nature. Because of the need for us to address this cashless policy, the issue of addressing network challenges. This goes to the core of it. And where it's not commercially viable for network providers, government should intervene. That is what government exists for.
Whereas, the motion failed to see the light of the day for now, as the Deputy Speaker, Mr. Idris Wase, called for it to be stepped down to allow for due investigation of grey areas and for further legislative inputs. And it's a wrap on the Mace for the week. Many thanks for watching. And see you next week. I am Rosemary Kokotega.